Okay, after that video, I thought of some more things I should tell you. My family, where I come from. So, my dad's, I don't really know. Sadly, I do not know that much about my dad's family. All I know is that his father was excommunicated from the Catholic Church for divorcing his wife and marrying my grandmother. And my dad is the youngest of 3 children, as I was the youngest of our 3. His father died when he was 16, and his mother died when I was 4. I remember her. She actually lived 2 blocks over from my elementary school, and we would go over there, and I remember her. We'd eat bread and butter, and those taffy cookies. I was only in kindergarten, but I have fond memories of her kitchen and looking out into her backyard. I was about eye height to her table. So I have some good memories there. My mom's side. All I really knew of my mom's side growing up was my grandmother. We call her Granny. We grew up really close with her. She was a 3rd grade teacher. She taught up the hill. Every Friday night, she would always have people over. And then, her friends and my mom's friends. I mean, it was like, 15, 20, sometimes more people every Friday night at her house. And then when I was older, my girlfriends would come, and, it was Friday night. That's what we did on Friday night. When we got old enough, it would be like, oh, we're having Friday night tonight? Yeah. So, because we go eat and watch TV and with family, and then my little cousins running around, it was every Friday night for as long as my grandma could do it until she got too old. So really, growing up in my youth, that's what I knew my grandpa Saunders, on my grandma's side. He lived to be well into his 90s. I even remember his wife. I can't remember his name, but I was very young when she passed, but I have clear memories of her and being in her house and her lace curtains. And I remember looking at her and thinking how beautiful she was, because she was so old and I was so young, and I remember just having that contradiction. And then there was my grandpa. We didn't know him at all. We were very estranged. We were not told much about him because my parents didn't know much about him. Neither did my grandma. There was a lot of family tension growing up. We saw him once a year at Christmas time for a few hours. That's it. At which time, they'd tell us about all these great travels, their yacht, and every place they went around the world, and bringing us back some little trinket from where they had been or whatever. But we didn't know him. It was just like every year around Christmas we had we gotta go to Pop-Ups today, or that day, where make everybody get ready, get them a present, we gotta go. But there was a lot of family tension, especially because my Granny and my Pop-Up had divorced, and I don't think it was a very amicable divorce. I don't think my grandma ever talked to him again, and I think I was well into my 30s before they were ever in the same room again. That was for somebody's wedding. That was a big deal. So I don't know what happened there. They divorced sometime after my parents got married and started having babies. So we didn't know my grandpa or his wife that well. So it was kind of like the big family joke. One would see him once a year. My aunt and my mom would be over in the corner, like hands on their hips, tapping their toes, like, kids, go ask your grandpa what he does, because he won't tell us. And he'd bring out this manila envelope and say, kids, I can't tell you, it's top secret. He was very quiet, didn't talk much, but he was always friendly. I never had a problem with him. He was nice, he was friendly, he was quiet. I was young. I was like, okay, whatever. We didn't know what was going on.
And then when I was about 11 or 12 years old, there was a retirement party for him.
up on top of a hotel, and I was young, but I remember it was a big deal. We had to buy dresses and we had to look nice, and my mom was very concerned about how we looked and everything, and it's actually heartbreaking. I want to cry thinking about it now. We left that retirement party with I remember being in the elevator with my mom in tears, like right after the announcements were made, and I was the youngest. I was like, what's going on? Why is mom crying? And everybody's just telling me, shut up, Joanna, shut up. And I remember being back in the car like, what's going on? Why is mom crying? And nobody would tell me. So I didn't even know what happened then. I don't even think I realized till 15, 16 years old that when he retired, it was the first time that my mom had found out who he even worked for, that he worked for NASA, that he had anything to do with aerospace, anything at all. And that hurt her because I guess it had been an issue for her whole life that he wouldn't tell them anything about what they did, what he did. And so, teenagers, I know he works for NASA. Okay, cool, my grandpa works for NASA, whatever. Wow. Mid-20s, oh, he's an engineer at NASA. Oh, wow, you know, great, that's cool. My grandpa's an engineer, you know, like I said, we see him once a year for a couple hours, and they're broke. We struggled our whole life. I mean, I even have memories of my mom crying on the couch to my dad about having to ask her dad for money, and she would talk to him and he would never offer, and she would actually have to ask him, and it was only for $500, and it was so heartbreaking for her. She cried and cried about it. She couldn't handle it. And he was bank. He had so much money. But that's beside the point. Again, I raised hippie, neither here nor there. And then what else? Wait, hold on a minute. And then it wasn't until oh, okay, so he's an engineer for NASA. That's all I know until my mid-30s. I came over for a Christmas party. My drunk-ass stepdad pissed off my pop-up second wife. And you know, my family's always been really open, in and out, people coming. So I had my girlfriends over and her kids over, and they were leaving. And I was at the door greeting them goodbye, and all of a sudden from across the room, I hear my grandma, or my step-grandma, slam her hand down on the table and yell, like really loudly at Russ, do you know who this man is? He's one of NASA's top 5 engineers. And I was like, whoa. And I'm already like 33, 34 years old. Like, and I'm like, whoa, who is my grandpa, you know? So we kind of just let that go because they're having a heated argument down there. And then so the next year I see him and I decided to ask him. And I'm like, so, Pop-Up, you were one of NASA's top 5 engineers. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, so, you know, what does that mean? What kind of engineer were you? And he's like, well, I was a systems guy. And I'm like, well, who's a systems guy? And he's like, well, basically, he's the jack of all trades, master of none. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, there's 5 guys, and one of them kind of oversees the whole thing. I'm like, wow, okay. And I'm like, so what did you do? And he says, well, what I can tell you that the Mars rover was my favorite project because it's like building a dune buggy for Mars. And that's all I ever got out of my grandpa's. That's all I ever heard. And so it's just at that moment that I was already in my mid-30s, 35, 34, just not too many years ago. And so it's at his funeral 2 years ago. You know, I'm at the funeral, everybody's being respectful and nice, and the preacher gets up and he says, and he even helped design the Vanguard when he was a naval officer. And my ears kind of perked up, and I'm like, oh, did he? The Vanguard, when he was a naval officer. So I didn't even know that was. A couple days later, I went home and I Googled it, and it's the world's second satellite. And this was only in 2014, 2 years ago now. And like at that moment I thought I had figured it all out. I thought I had the aha moment in my life. Like, that explains it. That explains it. That explains all of it. Oh my gosh, I can put all this darkness away from the past. I can put it all together in my head now. I can see what happened now. And so I went off, you know, just being, you know, thinking that was it. That was the missing link I didn't have to my life, and I could finally put it all back together. Yeah, but it didn't turn out that way. Then I turned 39, and things just started turning out of control again, which is, I think this is going to be enough for this video, but I think I needed to explain that much about myself. Because I thought, really, at that point, I was like, finally, I figured it out. I figured out that missing piece. And things can go back to normal now. I can finally put my life back together. And it hasn't seemed to work out that way. So, stay tuned, I guess.